some terms we use, just so you get a sense. Have you heard of non-duality? Yes, so you know what it is? No. You can't know what it is. No, non-duality is not two, yes? Simple negation, basically. It doesn't imply there's one. There's just not two. Yeah. There's a recognition of what's not, and by recognizing what's not, you'll get a sense of what is, which is us. Yeah. But if that which we are takes itself to be something else and then tries to find itself from the something else, it's not going to go anywhere. So the website we have is called Zenbitchslap.com. It was a little joke on a Zen koan. You ever hear of koans? Little mind twisters. The famous one is what's the sound of one hand clapping. So we had what's the sound of one hand slapping, Zenbitchslap. So it was, and you know, because when we entered into the mix of this message like 10 years ago, there was like the eternal now, the ever-present one, the beautiful of all beauty void.com, and then Zenbitchslap. So we like that. We wanted to have a little different, and it should be irritating, to tell you the truth. You know, a message that's worth its salt should have certain level of irritation. You shouldn't feel comfortable with it because that sense of you is the false reference. Yeah. So when the false reference thinks it gets the message, it neuters the message completely. It makes it something that it can understand, and as soon as you make it something you can understand, you miss it. You miss it completely. So I like to see everything as a verb. I don't see there's any nouns really. So if you see non-duality and it hits you in a certain way, you'll see it as a fact that there's just not two. So basically noun and verb is dismissed, and subject, object, and yes and no, and high and low, and all of that. And basically you just get a sense that everything is happening. Yeah. There's no starting point, there's no end point, there's no entrance, there's no exit. Everything is happening to the point that nothing ever happens really. So everything is happening, but nothing actually culminates into a happening. It's just always happening, so there's no point where it could turn into what happened. Yeah, it's always happening. So this is just my take on it. And then a lot of people talk about self or ego, but this isn't about an ego. An ego, a lot of times people will share that they have an ego or they lost an ego. We're talking about that sense of being the one who had an ego and lost an ego. That sense of being the one that comes before the opposites. The sense of being the one that goes yes and goes no, goes high and goes low, goes connected, gets disconnected. That sense is what I believe is not to be, which is not true. Yeah. So if you see yourself as not that, that's how you find yourself. You find yourself by recognizing what you're not. You don't find yourself for looking for what you are, because you are what's looking. Yeah? Yeah. There you go. That's the message really. And it's just a matter of if you hear it enough, because here we are talking, and you would generally think I'm talking to you, but I'm not talking to you. I've done that long enough, it doesn't go anywhere. We throw the message over your head basically, and we're hopefully talking to what you are, not who you are. Yeah? And we're talking to what you are about who you are. We're not talking to who you are about what you are. Because when you hear the message, it gets fucked, basically. Yeah? But if that which you are hears the message, it may go, hey, I may not be that. And as soon as mind, being a mind or the being, starts entertaining it's not that, there's a possibility of that being that. Yeah? You see a difference. When you, as what you're not, tries to entertain what you're not, you just get more and more confused. It doesn't go anywhere, in my experience. So this whole, we term this sense of how the sense of self is produced, selfing. Yeah? And selfing is basically a verb, and it's the act of being identified as a self. And the sense of self I'm talking about is a long-lasting, independent, separate thing. Yes? This, mostly a body-oriented starting point. So if you go into the memories, if you go into the thought system, and if you go into the perceptions, at any point you will find them in the act of being identified as a self. So if you go into the thought system, and see here, you can study about what you're not. Yeah? You can't study about what you are because you are that. Yeah? You're beyond studying. The only thing we can possibly be concerning what we are is being it. And I'm believing we're being it right now. We just don't think so in a lot of ways. So this idea of the act of being identified as a self is a movement the mental process does, which is it claims whatever it comes in contact with. So when our attention and interest goes into the thought system pictures you as a body. When you're thought about as a body. When it's thinking about you next year, you're pictured as a body in its thinking, yeah? And when it's reflecting back on you 5 years ago, it can only think about you 5 years ago in, let's say, Julian, by seeing you as a body. It couldn't think about you as a spirit. How would it describe, oh, there I am, amorphously floating around in the atmosphere of Julian 5 years ago? No, you would say, oh, I was at the freaking, whatever that place is we were at today, the grocery. Yeah. So then, okay, and then you would picture yourself as a body. The thought system pictures you as a body. It thinks about you as a body all day. Yeah. And then when you go into memories, the memories picture you as a body. And when you rely on perceptions, you see things. You don't see no thing. You see things, yeah? And you see a body, and after a while you assume that you're looking at a body from a body, yeah? So the whole system, all the mental processes are attempting to reinforce this idea of being a body, or by being a separate unit, a self. And they can't produce it, but they can make it look like it's already so. See, this is the trip. See, time is the main factor in the dream. Yeah? Time doesn't go linear. We believe it does. That's how we're suckers for a lot of the heist. Yeah? The mental state, what it does is it implies something after. It produces something after and it implies it's before. So let's say this idea of selfing. Let's say your head is thinking about you today, in the morning. So it tells you, oh, it's going to suck, The whole day's going to suck, and you believe it, and so on and so forth. And you're pictured as that person that's going to have a bad day, okay? So the mental process is selfing, yeah? It's assuming, insinuating, implying that you're a thing, and then there's a believing that you're a thing, yes? That comes after the selfing, and suddenly you feel like you're selfing. You see it? It's a heist happening. It isn't a heist that ever happened. It's a heist that's always seemingly happening. Yeah? So here it goes. So the mental state is assuming, implying, insinuating, or as a great master Ramana Maharshi said, there's a presupposing of a non-existent thing. This, yes? Then wanting to get salvation for the non-existent thing. Yeah. And so it says, if this is the condition, then your spiritual practices themselves are reinforcing the non-existent thing. How can they destroy it? Yeah. That's the shoe. See, this is like a spiritual shoe store. I walked into it by mistake, like 20 years ago. And unfortunately, they brought these shoes out, and I put them on, and they fit. Yeah, a whole lot was explained by these simple statements, because when I heard it, I saw it. Yeah, I saw that in a sense I had been trying to get out of self as a self my whole freaking life since about 6 years old. Yeah, I was trying to get out of what I thought I was in by that which I thought I was in, which is impossible. Self can't get out of self, as we say in recovery. Or as this great master says, hey, there's this presupposing a non-existent thing that wants to get salvation for the non-existent thing. What does presuppose mean? There's a supposing, your head is saying you're a body, it's remembering you as a body, it's projecting you as a body, then there's a belief that you're the body, and suddenly you're the body that's doing all the projecting, the belief, you see it? It's a presupposing. So the heist happens before you see it, and you look from it. And now you're practicing meditation, and the mental state is using every minute of meditation to imply a meditator. Yeah. So you're bonded to the idea of being a meditator through the meditation that you hope was going to free you from it. It's actually being used to bond you to the idea. So you run into this wall, like a great master Huang Po said, a great Zen master from China. He says, you can't use the Buddha to seek the Buddha. Yeah. You can't use mind to seek mind. You can't use light to seek light. Why would he say that to you if you're not the Buddha? Why would he say to Steve, hey Steve, you can't use the Buddha to seek the Buddha, when Steve has been practicing Buddhism for 30 years to try to acquire some traits he thought the Buddha had? Yeah? It's going to ruin Steve's fucking day. But he's not, the Buddha wasn't, the master Huang Po wasn't seeing Steve. He was seeing Buddha, aka Steve. Yeah? But he didn't see aka Steve, he saw the Buddha, and he was talking to the Buddha, which is what we're hoping to do tonight. And he's going, hey Buddha, you can't use yourself to find yourself. How long would it take for the Buddha to get that? No time at all, because he's the Buddha, or it's the Buddha. Once the Buddha gets the sense I'm the Buddha, and it catches itself looking for itself, what happens? It stops. Then it starts looking for stuff it can find, and it has a successful life, instead of looking for what can never be found because you are what's looking. It's the old story with the sheep and lion. You know, this lion mother and her cub. The lion mother gets killed, and the cub is roaming around. It doesn't know what it is. It misses its mother, and it sees a flock of sheep, and it starts moving towards the sheep. Now the sheep see it as a lion, but the lion doesn't know it's a lion. So the sheep start moving away, and they realize, hey, it doesn't even know it's a lion. So they ingratiate themselves with the lion, and now the lion tries to become the best sheep that a sheep can become. And he gets its hair curled, and it's sitting around listening to them all, worrying about who's going to be the next sweater, and it's trying to baa, you know. They stay away from his claws, but basically, he's pretty much a sheep. And so now he's feeling a little irritable, restless, discontent, because he's not a sheep. And he's trying to live, and he marries a sheep, and he becomes a big elder in the sheep flock, and they go there for advice, but he's always feeling like sort of strange, yeah? And then one day they're roaming around, you know, chewing cud, whatever, and a big lion comes into the meadow, starts chasing the sheep, and he sees out of the corner eye this lion running, and he thinks the lion's joining the hunt, and then it realizes it's running with the sheep. So he veers off, and he runs after the lion. The lion rolls over and says, please, Mr. Lion, don't eat me, I'm a humble sheep. The old lion's a little, confused, and just grabs it, drags it over to the water hole, sticks both their heads out. The young lion sees the reflection, and bammo. The old lion goes roar, and the young lion roars. It didn't have to take 3 months of roaring lessons. Yeah? Even though it believed it was a sheep, even though everyone else believed it was a sheep, it had never been a sheep. Yeah? So therefore, it didn't have to unbecome being a sheep, or it didn't have to try to become like a lion, like a sheep. It saw what it wasn't, and it immediately demonstrated the qualities of what it was. That's it. This is the simple message. It's a bummer in a lot of freaking groups I go to. But I heard it, and I'm going to lay it on you. Because it saved me a lot of time and trouble, and I've been traveling lighter as the sheep ever fucking since I realized I'm not the sheep. So I don't spend a lot of time trying to become like a lion as a sheep. I realized I wasn't a sheep, and I don't try to become a lion at all. Because I am a lion. Yeah, yeah. It's so beautiful because it's on the money. To me, I heard it was like an unspoken yes. It's never stopped reverberating. And over time, it's turned into the last answer because I haven't looked for any other answer ever since. I've just entertained this. I have no desire to get a turbocharged version of it or an extreme radical version of it. It's just ordinary dog shit awareness. You're incessantly on and you never get gypped. You're in it. See, this whole idea of getting into the moment is predicated on an insane idea you could be out of a moment. There's no way in hell you've ever been out of any moment you've been in, ever. Yeah? That's the way. See, if you want to stay in the moment, you're never going to stay in a moment by getting into it. You'll stay in a moment by realizing you can never be out of it. That's what works. The way that getting into something always predicates out again. Yeah? But to realize you were never in is the out. Yeah? Or you've never been out, and that's the in. So I'm never working to get into the moment because I can't be out of it, and I'm never working to get out of self because I can't be in it. And that's the way it goes. And I'm telling you, a truth will verify itself by the relief it brings. Yeah? And that this release is not of time. It's not produced, therefore it can't be unproduced. It's not acquired, therefore it can't be lost. It's not none of that. It has none of those qualities that demand you to play the major role in. It has nothing to do with you. It's prior to what you think you are. It's prior to thought, and it's always available at all times, right where you are, with no requirement necessary, except for the ones you make up, basically. Yeah. So the mental processes, the selfing, has one movement. It claims whatever it comes in contact with, and it uses it to reinforce the idea that it's a self. So here, thoughts. So thoughts are noticed. First you hear them, yeah? And it's weird. You hear them and they seem to sound like your voice, but they're just vocal cords of this body. Yeah? But because we're identified as the body, we think it's our voice. And you will listen to a thought in your voice than you would in Stanley's voice. If you heard Stanley's thoughts, you would have turned them off about, an hour and 50 minutes ago, after you heard them an hour and 51 minute ago. Yeah? You would turn them off. But you've been listening to your thoughts for how many freaking years? 40 years or something. It isn't the thoughts that are attractive, it's because they're about you that makes them seem so attractive, yes? So the mental state claims to be the thinker of all the thoughts. So now every thought, just like this, you see a bottle. This bottle means it's a bottle, right? I can change its meaning by calling it my bottle. Now the bottle is used to point to the owner of it, yeah? Here's thoughts, my thoughts. Yes? Always pointing to the thinker. Yeah? Same thing with feelings. Feelings, my feelings. Now the feelings are being used to imply the feeler. Now the thoughts are being used to imply the thinker. And most especially, the actions are being used to imply the actor. That's the activity of the bondage of self. That's all it is an activity. It never happened, but it can seem to be happening. It can appear to be true to you that it's happening, and you are reality. There's no doubt about it. Yeah? You are reality. So this whole thing is about seemingly so, and the definition of seemingly is appears to be true or false to you. This is it all day. Yeah? We call it in recovery an acronym of fear, false evidence appearing real. That's all that's happening in the head all day. It's presenting a lot of false evidence, and it's appearing real to us. Yeah? And then we act as if it's real, and unfortunately, what happens is consequences occur, and you get tattooed out of you. Yeah? I could have a girlfriend for 6 years, maybe 50 times I thought, I hate this girl, But I never say it. Just goes by, the party goes on, nothing gets interrupted. One day, I say it, she hears it. Now I go out and drink and forget that I said it, but she doesn't. By the time I get home, nor do any of her friends after she called everyone up. And now I'm tattooed with that freaking thought that had gone through my head because the my compelled me to put some oomph behind it, and it manifested and it produced an effect, and now I'm tattooed by it. I know guys in San Quentin, right, who killed people in blackouts. They can't even go back and see what happened, the event that has changed the rest of their life. They can't even go back and remember what happened, yet they're at the effect of that. And what was that but a thought that was held as mine, sufficiently enough to compel an action? Yes, that's all it is. Watch it. If you see it, you won't be looking from it. And you'll get a sense that you're prior to thought, not afterthought, that you're prior to actions, that you're way prior. And I don't mean the actor. You're not the source or cause. You're not the thing that's causing things. Yes, you're more of an effect. Yeah, so anyone in the Course in Miracles here? Yes? No? Everyone's stunned a little bit.
Yeah.
I just want to read something because humbly, the only way I think you can go about it is negation, yeah? So instead of looking for the truth, yeah, why not look at what you're not from the truth? Instead of looking for the truth from what you're not, look at from the truth about what you're not. Yeah, changes everything. So by seeing what you're not, you get a sense of what you are. But you'll never find that sense by looking for it from what you're not. So this is a bunch of downloads that happened. I don't want to explain what it is. It's pretty intense, but I love how it presents what we're not. And here it is. It's on page 468 if you're interested. And it goes, he starts talking about what they've talked about quite a lot, which is what we're not. So he goes, but still this strange idea which it does accurately describe, which this book does accurately describe, you think is you. That's the only way it could ever get close to being you, is you think it's you. The thinking is what makes it seemingly so, yeah? And it's the faith in the thought that gives it the power. Yeah. And the faith in the thought is like stabilized by my thoughts, yeah? My feelings, my life, my problem. Just like we could put money here, sex here, relationships here, and everyone would react to the words based on their situations, yeah? I can change the words completely without changing the letter of any of them. My money, my health, my relationships, yeah? So I wish all of you to have a lot of money, but I don't want you to have any of my money, yeah? The my changes everything. Do you think that's once every 10 years? It's all day. We're either before money, as pause or as spirit, or whatever you want to call it, or we're before money as my. There's a huge difference. Traveling lighter is the absence of my in one's life, basically. Yeah. For this to travel lighter, all it takes is a few my's to drop out, and it will travel quite lighter. And then what happens is traveling lighter begets the possibility of more traveling lighter. This is what happened with me. I was in recovery from alcohol and drugs. You know, I could look at my spiritual life, which I seem to have. I had one. I practiced meditation, went to a couple of continents, went to forests to meditate and see people in caves. But I could see a lot of fault in my practices. But one place I see no fault in was my devotion to drug use. You know, I was a perfect intravenous drug user. I loved cocaine. I would do anything for coke. I would take anything from you for coke. I was devoted to it completely. And you know what? You can never transcend an imaginary place. You're not going to get out of here as this. The dreamt is never going to leave the dreaming. Yeah. You just see you're not the dreamt, and then you recognize you're the dreaming. What happens now is people hear that they're the dreaming, but they take it to be, I'm the dreaming as the dreamt. Then they expect I'm going to have 20 Cadillacs and fucking babes galore, tons of money, yes? This is what the mental state does with the fact that you're the dreaming. It tries to find an advantage in it. This is not dreaming, this is dreamt. Mind is dreaming. Big M mind is dreaming this dreaming. And as the Course says, you and I are the dreaming of this dreaming. We forget that we're dreaming. And how could that possibly happen? It can't, but it can seem to happen. If the dreaming believes it can forget the dreaming by being identified as the dreamt, so will it seem to be. And as soon as it takes itself to be the dreamt and forgets that it's dreaming, it now gives everything it's dreaming the power to affect it. It sounds like your day. Doesn't it? It's a perfect diagnosis of every person's day. We're identified, seemingly, as a body, as the dreamt, and suddenly we own the thoughts own us. I've seen people's days ruined by one freaking thought. I've seen people's Hawaiian vacations ruined by thinking of Hoboken, New Jersey incessantly. I've seen it. When you were a kid, did thoughts ruin your day? When you were a kid, were you worrying about next week? Would you be playing next week? Yeah. Did you go home and say, hey Mom, come into my room, I want to talk to you about my playing? I thought Wayne was playing a lot better than I was playing. Should I take some playing classes? None of that happened. You weren't thinking much. Things were coming and going through you constantly, and yet you, quote unquote, were still there. What happened? If us as kids showed up right now and looked at us now, and let's say there were shooting stars going out, and they were thought, why are these fucking people listening talk about nothing? We should be outside. You know, or we'd be like this, and they're going, why? They don't see what's not happening. We do. Through how? By thought. We allow next week to dominate today. How's that possible? Next week will never encroach on today. We bring it here. We bring what's not happening into what's happening by entertaining it. We do. Dogs aren't worried about next month. They're not worried, will I have another walk? They're not fucking concerned. You know, there was a guy, Jesus Christ, supposedly, one of his big credits was he raised someone from the dead, Lazarus, you know? But at least Lazarus was alive at one time. We're making shit out of nothing all day. We don't see it as a miracle. How can next week ruin our day? It doesn't ruin everyone's day because it can't. You know, I can sit right next to you and you can be totally crazy and it's not contagious. Because I see the thoughts driving you crazy as yours. But the same thoughts, the same exact thoughts that I have an immunity to, if I see them in yours, suddenly have all the power in the world if I hold them as mine. It's not thoughts, it's the mind. You and I are the dreaming of this dreaming. We're it. We are reality. And we're lending it to things through being identified as a thing. And we're like, we don't understand the power that is being wielded. We're like that kid who takes that magnifying glass and doesn't know the sun is behind him and looks at the insect and incinerates the insect. Without an intention, it didn't notice that the sun was right over his shoulder and went through the magnification. Well, we're that object that's being magnified all day. You have been thought about billions of times by your head. Billions of times, probably from 8 this morning. This isn't meant to be the center of the universe. It's like a utilitarian vehicle. Fuck, it's not like supposed to be in front of the Rose Parade. It's just like fucking gets you somewhere. You get food. It's not meant to be thought about incessantly. I don't feel so. I mean, the greatest day of this body was when I realized I wasn't a body. I swear to God, the Urban Renewal Project stopped completely and I became okay. I'm not working on my fucking self. No freaking way. I turn like a Ford, I smell like a Ford, the upholstery looks like a Ford, I'm a fucking Ford. I'm not trying to make it like a chariot of the gods. Just this is a Ford and therefore I'm not a Ford. You see? Just like if you think the same way I think, how could they be my thoughts? If you have my feelings, how could they be my feelings? It's all made up. It's dreaming. And yet we're at the butt end of the joke. You know? So this is how it worked with me. I was in recovery and my head cracked open and I saw this idea of self as like a parasitical movement or a foreign installment or a failed GPS basically. And as soon as I saw it not as me, the possibility that arose that had been available for a long time but never available to me was I could be free from it. All I needed was the right view. I needed to see it as something other than me, and then the next point came up so clearly, I can be free from it. And when that happened, it showed me I had been trying to be free as it most of my life. I was attempting to get out of me and yet still be there to get out of me. And I'm here to humbly to tell you it's not going to work. It hasn't and it won't. This is more a seeing of what you're not. You cannot move from a false reference to get to the truth. You can only see that it's false, and that's the truth. And it doesn't take any time, and there's no vigilance needed. It's like when I was a kid, when I hit about 12 years old, you know, you start getting concerned about how you look and girls and stuff. And my hair got a little longer, and I used to go to this mall in Long Island called Roosevelt Field. And I had this one outfit I thought I looked pretty good in, you know. So they were red corduroys, and I had a gray long sleeve t-shirt. And I looked pretty good. And I will go to Roosevelt Field, I look at myself in all the windows, and a lot of people were looking at me, so it was working. So I go home, and then next weekend I do it again, take the bus, go there, strut around. And then one of my friends had compassion about 3 months into it and said, you know, Paul, you keep talking to me about that gray shirt and those red jean corduroys. I go, yeah, I like those. He says, you know, those red corduroys are magenta, bro. And you know that gray t-shirt is pink. And as soon as he told me they were pink and magenta, I never saw them as gray and red again. Even though I had been seeing them as gray and red for quite a while, as soon as I was corrected, I didn't go into the closet a month later. Are they gray or red? No, they were magenta and pink. They had always been magenta and pink. I had just assumed they were gray and red. I had assumed something that wasn't so, which wasn't the first time, nor will it be the last time. What I'm humbly saying is, we all are starting from an assumption that isn't true, and it's just as simple as this, as hearing this message, because it's not who hears it, it's what hears it. Yeah? And therefore repetition can be helpful, because you never know when the lazy Susan of the mental state, that one opening is going to open. It's sort of like spiritual sperm, so to speak. Yeah? So you put out the message quite a lot, and the spiritual sperm, because the mental state is like the Death Star. It's got a huge defense system. It will claim everything that's heard. Yeah? So if you hear that you're not a body, you're going to hear it as a body. Yes? It doesn't go anywhere. When you hear it as the truth, you're going to catch it as the falsehood. It doesn't go anywhere. Yeah? So you have to beat this little defense system by throwing a lot of sperm. And only one has to get through to hit the mother mind egg. And all it does, it hits it, and it conceives one possibility. I may not be that. Yes? And suddenly, the next possibility comes right out of it. I can be free from it. Bammo, now you have clear direction. Now the primary point has been corrected. Now the Eightfold Noble Path, you've gotten the first one, which is right view. Instead of thinking you can produce right view by right livelihood, the right does not get produced. It's inherent in the view. The view is right view, that there is no long-lasting, independent, separate entity, and then that migrates into all the other things, right livelihood, right understanding, right meditation. Right meditation is not you as a meditator trying to meditate yourself out of it. It's realizing there is no meditator. There's just meditating. There is no seer, there's just seeing. There is no hearer, there's just hearing. There's no feeler, there's just feeling. There's no taster, there's just tasting. And what's tasting, what's hearing, what's smelling, what's feeling, what's seeing cannot be seen, cannot be felt, cannot be tasted, cannot be touched, and cannot be had. You cannot know it, you can't experience it, you can't study it, you can only be it. That's it. That's the possibility. There's no other possibility. You'd have to be something else to know it, and you're not. I didn't even go into the thing. I just forgot all about the Course. And that's the beauty about the Course. If the Course works for you, you forget all about it. That's the whole point. The whole point about a message is you forget all about it, because the message is you don't need a message. If you're seeing life from the problem, you need solutions. But if you see it from the solution, there is no problem. It's an activity that the solution is entertaining. The only way what isn't real can seem to be real, it has to seem to be real to what's real. You have to be in cahoots with the dreaming, the buyer. You're not, this is, to me, then you stop looking for what can't be found. I'm successful every day. I found a good latte today. I can buy a pair of pants. I almost bought a hat, almost a Julian t-shirt. I could have been successful on all my searches because I'm looking for something I can find. I'm never looking for what can't be found anymore. And I'm not going to buy, it could take lifetimes. No freaking way. Can you imagine if you ordered a couch and the company told you, hey, the delivery of your couch could take lifetimes? You would fucking cancel the freaking thing. What's with spiritual business? They got you hooked for lifetimes. It could take, no, it doesn't take any time. You are already that which you're looking for. Why do you think they say these cryptic things? Not to be sadistic, they're true. What's looking is what you're looking for. St. Francis did not say what's looking and then 50 pages of requirements you have to meet to be what you're looking for. It says what's looking is what you're looking for. Like, right, and what? That's it. You can't, all right, I'm going to act disinterested. You're never going to see what's looking because you're what's looking. It's not, where's what's looking? It's you right now. So what's looking is what you're looking for. The seeker is the sought. Yes? The open secret. How could it be a secret if it's open? Exactly. The gateless gate. How could it be a gate without a gate? Exactly. It's like here, we're like fish going to a let's get wet class. We're fucking totally drenched all day because we don't pick up what's always happening. We don't. Our perceptual apparatus cannot embrace what we are. It will always fumble and make it into something. It can't get it. You can't get what's always available at all times. Because your story is that's what's always available at all times, and you're not. You're an idea. You're an idea that you weren't even captured by from 0 to 18 months as a body form. There was no sense of self when you were young. It formulated by the mental processes developing. And then suddenly, all the attention going through the other gates of consciousness got sucked up into this little porno theater, and it became all about you, and life was stopped being seen as happening, and then became a story, life's happening to me. And why is it happening to me? And it should be happening to you, and on and on and on. Yeah, and then you get entranced like Narcissus in the pool, because all the ripples are about you, and you're totally, totally into it. See, it's amazing. I can't write blogs on this, you know. If I was on a spiritual journey, I could have 30,000 followers. I went to ayahuasca, I painted my face, I saw the fucking insect alien, blah, 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 blah. Man, I'd read that. But here, I went to 7-Eleven. I bought some Wonder Bread, had some peanut butter. That's it. It looks just like I did last time. If I had like a private investigator, they would have quit in an hour. But the guy fucking doesn't do anything. Because I'm not looking for fucking anything. I'm so tired of it. To me, after you get released, you see how much slavery is here. We're enslaved to time, how time dominates us completely. To watch anyone driving, it's all time. All time. Every effect they think they're having is based on time. Time is the main aspect of the dreaming. Subjective time. You know? You're at work and it seems like an epic, 40 years. You're having a great time, it goes like that. It's all dreaming, isn't it? So the Course gives us a beautiful statement. He says, listen, we're all dreaming ourselves out of this dreaming. And as we do, the dream will get happier. That will be a good indication it's getting close to the end, yeah? And I humbly believe, if you do have a quote-unquote event of that which is always happening, when it downloads, one of the aspects that's going to come with the download is it's always been this way. So it negates any reality of all the past or any reality of a future. You know what I mean? In other words, everything gets erased. One whack of what is just negates every other possibility that you've ever entertained, puts it mute like that. You get that it's always been this way. You may seem to forget in time, but the timelessness never does. Yeah? And the dreaming is in time. In time, you can seem to forget the unforgettable, but not. It doesn't matter. It doesn't, because this is all erased every night when you go to sleep, basically. So. Any questions?
Very real.
Yes, very
real.
Yes, yes. What it is available. Yeah. Not on a time layaway plan. Like right now, it's available. And you can be let off the biggest hook of all, your own, really. You know? You know, people at these groups, I don't know how popular this stuff is here, but in certain niches, awakening is a really big word, and enlightenment is a really big word, and most of the people would have been happier if they never heard those words, if they never heard about awakening, and especially they never heard about enlightenment, because enlightenment, in one of its definitions, means the cessation of all suffering, yet people at these type of meetings are using it to suffer immensely by saying they're not enlightened, or worse, that someone they know is enlightened and they don't think they should be, or whatever. It's just fucking really incredibly painful. It is. And you gotta see the whole flavor of, with that one example. Here's a beautiful statement that is the epitome or definition of release, and it's being used to bind one. Yeah. You see the theme of the mental state? The theme of the mental state is like, for some people, they're having a great time and they get nervous in 10 minutes. When are they gonna figure out, I don't deserve this, or I'm a fraud, or she's gonna realize I'm an asshole? But the same person, if there's just a whiff that they may be feeling bad, they think they're entering a lifelong depression. Can you live with that theme setter day in and day out, with the hopes that you can like convince it to give you more of a break than it's given you? That's slavery. Yeah. There are other mind modalities, and some of them aren't based on self. Some of them are very inclusive. It's win-win, and the primary point is now and here. And then in that, there's a great immunity to what's not happening, because you're awake to what's happening. And you know what? Tons of shit can happen in what's not happening. You can have cancer in what's not happening. Your girlfriend could be sleeping with someone else in what's not happening. Yeah? But in what's happening has one quality what's not happening will never happen, which is it's happening. You may not like it, you may have opinions about it, but it is happening. You are seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching right now. And that's more than enough to give you your immunity to all of that bullshit of what's not happening. And most people's fear isn't fear, it's mental anxiety based on what's not happening. Most people who are having a bad night tonight isn't because of tonight, it's about last week and next week. You have to see it. Yeah. Or if you don't, you'll be looking from it. And then you want to get out, and that's the biggest form of being in. When you want to get out as what you're not, that's the biggest form of being in it. When you're driven to get out of it by it, that's big. That's the bigger it of it all. Yeah. The biggest in here of what you're not is getting out. There's every exit is an entrance. You never fucking go anywhere. I've been on it. I've seen it. It doesn't take much to see it. But when you see it, you'll see it quite a lot. Yeah, and you'll see exactly what these people were saying and how true they are. That one word is worth 500 scriptures. Self can't get out of self. That one statement of you can't use the Buddha to seek the Buddha is better than 50 freaking books. Yeah? Because your mind will never stop reading it. It will just entertain it and go off. And what happens is it will reveal all that it's not. You will realize that you've been trying to get out of self as a self when you finally entertain you're not one. You'll see that's exactly what was happening. What they were warning about was exactly what was happening. Exactly. The seeker is the sought. What's looking is what you're looking for. You cannot use the Buddha to seek the Buddha if you're the Buddha. Yeah? You cannot use mind to seek mind if you're mind. You cannot use light to seek light if you're light. It doesn't matter. You can do it for eons and nothing's going to happen. This becomes true touchstones, and it eliminates tons of bogus fucking sniffing around and looking up dead ends. Because all of that gets embellished in that is you, the you that you're not. The biggest, how long are you a know? When do you meet God? It's always you as the knower of God that's emphasized. The selfing is always the biggest star of all paths and all stories and all processes. It's all about you. This is prior to any of that. It has nothing to do with you. That's why it works. It doesn't need your help. It doesn't need your agreement. It's because a higher level of something is convinced. You're never convinced. You're split. You can be convinced and unconvinced in 5 minutes. But something in us, if you want to call it the innermost, can be convinced. There can be that unconscious acceptance or surrender where you know you're fucked. And that's that. And you know you're not managerial quality. And that's that. And there's no more argument. And now you start getting changed by life. Instead of trying to change yourself, you submit to being changed. And that which can be changed will be changed to become a maximum use to that which you are. It will. You'll be put to service for sure. So that's that. Yeah. Yes? Yes. And it is an invitation. You don't want to beat the horse dead. You know, it's already dead. It's just a simple invitation. It's not a draft. If you like it, you know, check it out. If you don't understand it, great. That's perfect. And if you can see you're not that which goes home and thinks about it, even better. Because the thinking will neuter it completely. If you think you're going to understand this, you're sniffing up the wrong tree. This is not built to understand that. This is built to live in a dream. Yes? This takes what isn't so to be so. You're not going to change its source code. You're not. I see it. You can see places like this. You can go on a 2.5-day retreat of chanting you're not a body, right? But what's not a body doesn't need to chant it's not a body. What wants to chant it's not a body is a body. Because it wants to get a break from being a body. So it thinks, all right, I'm going to chant I'm not a body. But all it's doing is reinforcing that you're a body, chanting you're not a body. Just see you're not a body. It will save you 3 days. I mean, when you fall upon a way, which is no way that works, the working is obvious. There won't have to be a huge commentary to convince yourself. You'll feel it. You'll have a sense of lightness and space and presence, not as an experience, but as an inherent condition. I don't experience presence. Here I experience total emptiness. I get absolutely nothing out of him in any of these talks, and I've been in the hole of the donut thousands of times. There's nothing to be had at all. I'll get more when I go in the kitchen than I will out of this talk. I swear. It's like going to a cleaner. I don't get a pair, I get a suit out. It's nothing. If you're an experienced junkie, it's just another addiction. It's just like shooting dope. It is. You go for a peak experience, what else? What happens? You want to have another peak experience. It's just like shooting dope. Most spiritualities like shooting dope. You're just stupider because you have a delayed gratification. At least I get a rush in a second. At least I changed how I felt like that, and I didn't spend $3,000 in a week. Yeah. This doesn't need. You don't need more of this. You've heard it. You've heard it. You've all been served the spiritual subpoena. You're gonna get called to the court of light, and all your little mental transgressions will be annulled and void. They will. Nothing ever fucking happens. And acceptance will come into that which has never been accepted. Yeah? This as me would never be accepted. Seeing it as not me, it brings about an acceptance. Yes? Yeah. So that's that for me. You? That's cool. Yeah. And go to Zenbitchslap if you want to hear it. There's tons of free content. And I have some books here. One of them's a non-linear book. The other is more of help. Non-duality should have absolutely no help in it. Really. Really, it's a fact. You should get nothing. Because where is a non-duality meeting? There's no non-duality meetings. They're duality meetings. You teach duality. You do not teach non-duality. You teach duality. That's all that's needed. You see what you're not, and that's how you find out what you are. You're not going to find out what you are from what you're not. And this is the dilemma. We are starting from a false reference. So the questioning must be towards not from that. That needs to be questioned. Not the questions issuing forth from there, but the questions going at that. See if it's so or not. If it's not, are you the thinker of the thought? See. If you're not, you'll travel lighter with thoughts. And then you'll realize, wow, the heaviness was claiming to be the thinker of them. Why do you find that out? Because you have relief finally. And it's just like, you could have like let's say we're in Julian. Nobody in a cafe in Julian was talking about the effects of gravity today on them. They were blaming a steep hill or a staircase, yes? And then there could be a professor of gravity, went through 14 years of study and wrote tons of books, but all you need to do to know all about gravity is to go into an anti-gravity chamber and you'll know what gravity was like by its absence. You don't know it by its presence because it's on you all day. See what you're not, and by its absence you'll recognize its presence and you'll see it as an activity that you have been indulging in. It has not been imposed upon you. It has been thrust upon you. The solution is entertaining the problem. That's why it can change when the solution changes. It sees, hey, I'm not that, and that's that.
All right. What? Question.
Yeah.
So seeing what you're not points to what you are.
Yes.
Because you're stating, I'm not feeling, I'm not the thought is coming, I'm not the thought form. So it does point to what I am. That's the premise.
Well, it intimates what you are. Because by seeing what you're not, that's the quality that you are, which is seeing or awareness, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah. So by seeing what you're not, which is all the activities that are being used to imply you, you just see the activities. So you're seeing the activities of thinking as thinking, not you thinking, not you being thought about. You has been thought about, but not you, yeah? And then you see feelings as feelings. There's no invalidating feelings or thoughts or actions. There's no validating that the thought implies a thinker. There's no validating that all the feelings imply that there's one feeler. Or validating that all the actions imply that there's an actor. You just don't buy it anymore. So now actions are actions, thoughts are thoughts, thoughts and feelings are feelings. They're not being used to imply. They're still being used, but you're not buying the product. The mental process will continue doing what it does which is claiming all the faculties to imply that there's someone who has the faculties. Just like it claims to be the one who's conscious. The thought that of you comes after conscious contact. This is how the presupposing happens. The thought of you comes after conscious contact, but when you entertain the thought, you feel like you're before conscious contact as that thought pictures you, as a body. So now it's you who are the one who's seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching, which is obviously not true, because seeing has no volition in it. I'm not going to seeing classes, you know? I'm not going to hearing classes. If my hearing is bad, it's not the hearing, it's the ear. Yeah? This eye isn't seeing, this eye facilitates seeing. If I died and nothing happened to this, this eye wouldn't never be seeing another thing, but if you took it out of this body, put it in a live body, it would facilitate seeing. Yeah? But the eye isn't seeing. The seeing is the awareness, or if you want to say in manifestation, consciousness. So the seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching is not of time. It sets off time. It's now, right? Seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching. The mental process says that onness implies there's someone who's on, and then you're tagged as a body to be the one who's conscious. Now you believe you can become more conscious because you believe you can be less conscious, when all there is consciousness. You see it?
Yeah.
Yes,
just taking out the labels, even the label of hearing, what hearing is, you know? We think it's a certain act, but it's more.
Yes, exactly. There's just assumptions galore. And the language is the main supporter of it. Because the language implies we have a lot to do with shit we have nothing to do with. Doesn't it really? Like we used an old standard of when I was doing a talk back east, and I hadn't been there in a while, and a guy came in and said, "Hey, Paul, you're growing your hair." And I said, "Yeah, I'm growing my hair. It's looking pretty good." And he was balding. I'm saying, "You're not doing too good of a job. I got a group I've joined that we grow our hair together, and I've gotten a half an inch more a month. So I'll give you the number, and you can come and let's grow our hair together." And you can go on and on. And I'm proud of, look at what a great job I'm doing. But all I'm doing is not cutting it. I'm not growing any hair. Yeah? But the language implies I'm doing something. Or I'm surfing and my knee goes out. Or how I told people what happened, I hurt my knee in the water. It sounds like I went out in the water with a hammer, banged it, and then, all right, I didn't hurt my knee. My knee went out, and then I realized it, which was a drag because I was out in the ocean, and then I had to get back in. That was what really happened. But the language makes it sound like I went out and did it. Like I hurt my knee, like purposely. You're listening to this all day, as if, with like great devotion. Really. I mean, really. We're avid listeners to K. Paul or K. Mary or K. Amelia. There's a subscription of one, but that one audience is rapt. We're like, oh yes. I mean, why do you think it's not going to imply something when it does all day? The language implies you're a doer. You're the cause. You're the one. You're hearing it all day. You think it's not going to have an effect? You think you're an island unto yourself? You don't even know what the fuck's going on. We don't. We're just assuming like crazy. And then we get other crazy people to agree with us, and then we all think we're really onto something. It's bogus. Jeez. Watch it. Why would you want to give away that one quality? Why would you go asleep intentionally? You're inherently awake. We're all awake here. There's only two possibilities. You can seem to be awake to that idea, or you can seem to be asleep to it, but you're not changing the fact of it. What's when people talk about feelings? They go, I didn't want to feel that. So the feeling came first. There was a conscious contact with an event, and then a mental thought about you, and then that you had an opinion. It didn't, because it says I'm before the feeling, and I should have some say in it. I didn't want to feel that. But you're not before the feeling. Just like if you think you're the thinker, it drives you crazy. Why aren't they listening to me? These are all my thoughts, but none of them. They're like having 1,000 children, not one listen to you. I mean, it's frustrating completely, especially having an important engagement tomorrow. You're going, please stop thinking from 11 p.m. to 8 a.m. Give me 9 hours. I just need to get my life straightened. You're up at 1, 2, 4, 5. It's so frustrating because there's an assumption when you are implied to be before shit that you have some power over that comes after, but you're not before. Not as what you're taking yourself to be. You are before, all before, but what you are is a product that implies it's before the product was made. And therefore you feel frustration when the product doesn't come out the way you thought you wanted to be made because you were ahead of the line and you're not. You're an afterthought. You're an afterthought that believes it should be before everything, but you're not. So you think you have power, you don't. And it's incredibly fucking frustrating. Really, you worked for 2 years to meet that person and you got the candles and you have the tantric whatever, and the hot tub and Epsom salts, beautiful bamboo sheets, and you're getting ready and then you go, did I leave the stove on? At your house, your whole fucking night's ruined. You can't seem to, nothing lines up. When you're in New Jersey, you want to be in Hawaii. When you're in Hawaii, you're thinking about New Jersey. You can't get it lined up, can you? And even if you get it lined up, what happens? You go to a retreat for 2 weeks. Everything is beautiful. 9 o'clock in the morning, Sunday, it all lines up. You feel great. You haven't heard anything from the outside. You haven't heard anything from anyone owing money. Everything is perfectly lined up. You feel perfect emotionally, physically, circumstantially. 9 in the morning. What happens when 9:01 arrives? Things change. Yes? 9:03, 9:04. How could 9 o'clock you're in heaven, 9:05 you're in hell? You got to be suspicious. How could you have gotten from heaven to hell so quickly? It's all been made up in one's head. You're before it. You're not after it. If you're after it, you're going to be enslaved to everything that truly comes after you. Because it will imply it's before you. The thoughts will dominate you. Feelings will dominate you. Actions will tattoo you. Yet you're before all of it. Why not let a little of that flavor come into this life? It will allow you to travel lighter in a stabilized manner as this. As what you're appearing to be. It won't promise everything will get great, but you'll travel lighter with whatever you're going to go through. Be it cancer, no cancer, divorces, no divorces. You'll travel lighter over it, and after a while, what more the hell do you want? Really, what you want is an ease and comfort in the body. The body doesn't want to meditate for 13 hours. It doesn't want to fucking fast for 30 days. It wants to sleep in a nice bed and have shaman tissue and shit like that. It's not into this whole thing. You're dragging it with your fucking little fantasies. Really, does it? Have you ever gone on retreats, meditation retreats? The first day is a humble little pillow, yeah? And about the 8th day, you go in, there's castles of pillows. Everyone's just trying to get their ass somehow not on the fucking ground because it's driving them crazy. They've been sitting for 13 hours, which is very abnormal. And so they've got these giant, 30 pillows, and they're propped up. It's just insane. Just lay down. Give it up. You're not going to meditate yourself out of fucking anything. Have you? No way. So that's it. Sorry, going off. I'm a little upset with certain things. I am. I see spirituality as a business. I do, in a lot of ways. And I wish there was a committee that when you were going to go on your 30th retreat, you'd have to send an application to a fucking committee, and they go, no fucking way. If 30 retreats haven't worked, 31 won't do it. And please save your freaking money for something else. And I think it's getting a little out of hand. There's no, like in AA, there's interventions, you know what I mean? someone's way off the rails, either his friends or his family, put a stop to it, or they give it a possibility. In spirituality, there's no interventions. No one's going to come up and go, you've been to too many of these meetings, let's go. Now, drop that DVD, put the book down. No, it just goes on and on and on and on, and it's not freaking healthy. It's not healthy. It's not working. It's not helping. People are getting more obsessed with self, trying to get out of self. And there's no one putting a stop to it because they're paying money. And people are getting the money. And if you go on a retreat with a teacher, they're never sitting there with you. They know better. They're having a latte in the back. They're not sitting 14 hours a day with you. No freaking way. Because they know it's not going to produce anything. It can't. You can't produce the inherent state. You can't produce a surrender. It has to happen or it doesn't. I had a lady call me. She spent $1 million on spirituality. She had pretty much gathered it up. She'd spend all night, never sleep, watch 13 hours of videos. I swear. She had been talking to some people every week for a year at like $300 a fucking session. We had 2. I said 2. Never heard from her again. I hope she never fucking got into it again. I swear to God. It was unbelievable. You know what I mean? Someone needs to put a stop to that. Yes.
So, what do you see as the point of duality?
What's the point of duality? Expression. I see this whole place as an expression, really. I don't see it as acquiring or arriving at or getting. I see it as expression. So. And time, look at how much beauty is brought out through time. Can you imagine if flowers were always blooming? If they didn't they didn't start out as a bud like an orchid. An orchid's like a very long drawn out striptease in a way, right? It's a bud, and then slowly it opens, and it stays open for like 3 months, and it goes away. That's gorgeous, yeah? Time is beautiful. It can tease out so much beauty, and in music and everything, it takes a beauty and stretches it out and twists it, and like even like a sunset, you know? You get 8 minutes of a beautiful living mural, you know? That's
So you're
time.
saying all of this duality for a big art project.
I see it as there's a lot of beauty in it being teased out. There's no bad or good. It's just something to notice, to see that it's dreaming and not real, yeah? So that maybe you could travel lighter through it. Maybe you could, like we say in AA, not take yourself so seriously, yeah? Maybe you could, see there's this thing in AA, we do an inventory process, and a lot of people when they do it, they think everything's going to get better. But what happens is they just are able to accept how things are, yeah? And that was the gift they weren't even looking for, yeah? They just were able to accept things as it is. There's a real beauty in that. Yeah.
Hey Paul,
Yeah.
do you see value in experiential things that you might call a retreat? But I know, for instance, like in India, there's somebody who teaches like a laughing retreat, which in essence puts us into a state of more sort of like just being present with a sort of like a child-like place. So you talked about the child that,
Yeah.
you know, play has no agenda, right? So if you are you saying that do you believe that life is experiential and that anything that is a pursuit of an experience that we think is somehow going to give us an advantage is not worthy of
No.
pursuing?
No. What I would say, experiences are great, but the mental state is going to use them to imply an experience there. I would just like to have eyes to see that, that's all. Yeah? And because you're in the experience, then there's value. Yeah? Because you're value. You're reality. Yeah? So nothing is quote unquote can be a deterrent to mind. It just may take longer. Yeah? To dream itself out of it. But I have no trouble with experiences. I like to fuck around with it because of the sanctity of some of this stuff that I would see is the commerce of the mental state is very, very prevalent at retreats. There's a lot of self-building at retreats. I mean, really, because if the mental state has a spiritual bent, then it thinks meditation is more than doing, more valuable than doing dishes, the mental state sees that as a gold mine because it can extract more glue out of those kind of noble endeavors than ordinary, yeah? So I just like to point out that the mental state is always going to claim, through whatever experience is going on, that you're the experiencer. Now, I would say it would be nice to have that warning pronounced so that you can catch it in the act, because it will not break into your house if you're home.
Mm-hmm.
It won't. So therefore, fuck, go to the laughing retreat. I laugh a lot, myself. Yeah, really. Because really, the head was like a really bleak CNN news station most of my life, and then now it's just Comedy Central. So it's the same material, but it's being used differently. Really. And it's funny as hell up there. It's amazing what it's doing up there. Before it was so ponderously serious. It was fucking, I'd want to shoot coke, very much. Get out of it. Yeah, but no, I have no problem with it. I would like these things like a warning on a cigarette pack. I'd like to have warnings when people are going into these processes, because I didn't hear about it. When some guy I was sharing somewhere, and he says, well, you've heard this message, and I said, no, I didn't hear the message that's coming through this. That's why this message is coming through. I went to satsangs, I didn't hear this emphasized. I didn't hear the emphasis on that which you're not is going to be claiming everything. It's going to be claiming to be the ones hearing this message. I didn't hear that at satsangs, yeah? And that's what motivated me to start sharing, because I saw it as the problem, as Ramana Maharshi saw it as the problem, as Huang Po saw it. He says, hey, without you seeing this, you're going to be looking from it. Yeah, it's the heist of all heist. It happens after, but says it's before everything. So this is the exact, I'll tell you, I was trying to say it like we did the other night. This guy came to see me, and he says, okay, so is Paul Pauling and then not Pauling, Is Paul like selfing or not selfing? And he went on this whole thing. I said, no. What happens is the mental state is selfing, yes? And the selfing, if heard in a certain, implies that you're a self, right? So here's the selfing, and then you, combined with the selfing in a certain way, produces a sense of self. What happens is that self is now presupposed to be before the selfing, so now it says, I've been selfing all day. Do you see it? Mm-hmm. The selfing can produce, it doesn't have to, because you have to be in cahoots with it. The selfing is insinuating there's a self. It's implying there's a self. It's presupposing there's a self. So you're hearing the selfing, and you buy it, and then suddenly the self is produced, and as soon as the self is produced, it's presupposed to be before the selfing. So now you think it's Pauling. But there's Pauling and then the possibility of Paul. There's not Pauling. You see? There's selfing self, not self-selfing. Yeah? Just to see it. It may not seem much, but if you can catch the thievery, it's in time. It happens after the fact, but implies it's the fact. And now you start from Paul, and Paul's a false reference. I'm just humbly telling you, it's not the right longitude and latitude. So all the maps that are going to be drawn up from where you're thinking you're starting from, you're not starting from there. So you can have a perfect map to LA, but you're assuming you're leaving from Omaha, and you're in LA. So if you take a perfect map and you leave from imaginary Omaha, you're never going to arrive in LA because you're in LA already. That's the humble thing. I try to say 8,000 different ways, because if it hits, it will click, and you'll come out of the mental logic, and you'll see something in a new way, and that way works. I'm telling you. It's seamless, it's sound, it's like the horses in front of the cart, or in Zen where you say you'll see blue is blue and red is red. Things will become clear. You will not be looking for what can't be found. Everything will be. And you'll find out about what you are, because you're being it all day. You really will. You'll find out that you're not what you think about. You really aren't. You are clear, brilliant, always available at all times, untouchable like the sky. The sky lets tons of shit appear in it, but not one thing leaves a mark on it. Yes? That's what mind is like. That's what we are like. All the stuff we think we've done leaves no mark on what we are. There's no need for forgiveness. Nothing ever fucking happened. So there, I'm done now. Yes. So buy a book, throw some money in here. Have a lavish lifestyle.